So it's great to reconvene. What's going on? How's life?
Oh, well, now that winter is pretty much over, life's a lot better.
Yes, it is.
When I was when I was younger, it didn't bother me as much, but
Yeah.
now I'm finding it's a real grind. And the cold weather and the dull, it's bright and sunny today, but the cold weather and the dull, man, it just grinds me right down. So I've got to do two things. I got to get used to it or I got to get younger. I don't know.
Benjamin Buttons, where are you? How can we get that serum? It's so true, and I'm in the same boat. Being here in Kansas City and going through the four full seasons, I find myself getting to a point where it's like this time of year with everything budding and coming out, it just
Oh yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
regenerates our synapses. Like there's the Kansas City Royals have a practice day before opening day, and I always go every year, and it's a free event. They open the stadium up, the players just practice. But I always love sitting there and taking in a deep breath and just realizing, we made it. Here we are.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I've known for a number of years that I'm a highly sensitive person, HSP, which is a neurodivergency, not a big deal.
Yeah,
And for many years, I thought, okay, it's kind of like having brown eyes. It's nice, but so what?
yeah,
And
yeah.
over the past few months, I've been spending more time really taking that seriously. I was invited to do a presentation at a summit, so I learned a lot more about my how my HSP has played into my life and my work and everything. So I realized that I'm a lot more sensitive than I really thought I was.
Yeah.
And so you get the weather, and it's just been so wild. I mean, this past couple of weeks has been nothing but dark and rain and snow. Wow. Yesterday it was 20 degrees, which is like seven in the 70s. And I was on the patio.
Yeah.
I was finally, I'm free. I'm out of
I know.
jail.
I know. It's
It's
wild.
so, it is so insane. And then the the nonsense that's happening out of Washington, it just adds this whole layer of stress. So it's just super crazy. So I'm yeah, talking to a decent guy and it's good weather. So who could ask for anything more?
That's what I'm talking about. My son's on the spectrum. He's 20 and he has levels of sensitivity that are very specific. There's things like, he loves fountains, loves water, but there's certain, weather related things, loud crowds, things. So
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
and there's sometimes we'll go into things like I'm a visual artist and we went into a showing at a gallery last year and it didn't seem that loud. And when he was over at the table just getting all this food and going in, and he just finally got to the point where he was like, I got to go. I got to get out.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes I just don't know and it's too much. And it's like, all right, let's go. We're out. And that's
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's crazy. I was listening to the radio station this morning, and for whatever reason, most of the music was higher pitch, and I'm thinking, stop it,
Uh-huh.
stop it,
Yeah,
stop it. So I'm constantly hitting my button to tone it down or turn it off. So I don't
absolutely.
know whether it's aging or lack of patience or just because, but anyway.
I think at this age, it's a multiple choice question and it's all the above. We just stack up these.
Oh, you just
So
made me feel so much better.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think it's just being a human on this
Yeah,
planet
yeah,
right
I
now
think so. I
with
think
all of the
so.
noise.
Yeah.
We got to find that inner peace somehow.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
and
Yeah.
that's why we have podcasting. So, we reconvened on LinkedIn, had a discussion. So, what would you like to get into today?
Why don't we just carry on from what we've been talking about?
Yeah,
Because it seems to me, HSP, 20 to 30% of the population has it. Now,
yeah,
how many of us know it?
yeah,
Yes. So I think it would be interesting for you and I to share some experiences for the audience who's not aware that
yeah.
they have this.
Absolutely.
Not that I'm an expert, but I'm thinking, wow, and there's just so much resource available for it.
Yeah.
So it just if 20 to 30% of the population has it, some of your audience has HSP and doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And they're probably struggling like your son. So I think that'd be great. Your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Yeah. And you know what it makes me think is that it's almost like that Darwinian notion of evolution. We've gotten to a point where there's things that have happened just in our lifetimes. I mean, just even me being born in 72, I've seen this bridge from rotary dial to unbelievable
Oh,
AI
yeah.
speeds. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of these
Yeah.
environmental
Yeah.
factors, and I think about my son, like his only thing that he has that has made him be on the autism spectrum is one extra long arm on his 15th chromosome. And I think there's a lot of us that have these genetic DNA pieces that are a part of it. And I'm going to point something out real quick that will feed into what we're going to talk about. I was interviewing someone the other day, and they were like, "You need to listen to this podcast called the Telepathy Tapes." And I was like, "It's kind of like The Office. I've been in corporate America. It can be. I don't really. Office humor is hard for me to get into. It was too close to home for too long. And
Yeah.
sometimes with autism, I have to be very tangential because when you live it, you want to break sometimes. But she was like, you have to listen to it. And I started listening to it, and this is what it is. It's about kids in the world that are have autism. Like my son's on the spectrum. He doesn't have it, but he's on the spectrum. These are kids that have autism that are nonverbal and they can read minds. And they
Mhm.
verified it scientifically. So these kids, they put them in other rooms with GoPros and everything, and they'll have their parents in another room, and the kids will guess what their parents are thinking. And it's verifiable and it's wild.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
So when we're talking about hypersensitivity and all of these things, I think these newer advents of the human conditions we're living through are a part of our environment, a part of our
Oh,
Darwinian process.
totally, just totally. And it's interesting because I, for most of my life, I've been interested in spirituality, not necessarily religion, but spirituality. That things happen for a reason. That there is a force greater than all of us. And I'm consciously doing journaling to track some of these weird coincidences. There really aren't coincidences. We're just not aware of what's going on. And
Yeah,
so the increased awareness, it's as if there's not enough else going on.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
this thing. So it's I'm loving it, but man, it's exhausting. It is just so exhausting.
Yeah, it certainly is. So let's talk about, and this is kind of like a lot of things. When people need spiritual guidance or they need coaching or they need these things, when do people recognize the sensitivity? When should they start asking questions and seeking help?
Yeah, okay.
How do you think that happens?
Um, I don't know. In my case, it's learning something new. I'm a chronic, passionate, lifelong learner, and I love learning new things. And almost as much as learning new things, I love sharing them with others. So when I learn something new, I want to share it with somebody who's going to benefit from it. And I'm thinking that that's probably part of my life purpose, that this is the God-given gifts I have, that this is what I'm all about here. So in my case, it's when I learned about HSP, isn't that interesting? And then I started to realize, wait a minute, I have been really acting these characteristics. I've been embodying these characteristics without really realizing it for most of my life. So for me, it's the awareness. Um, and a lot of people aren't as aware as, and even without the HSP, I think I've been aware. So I think for me, it's the awareness. I know for other people, it's a crisis when there's a crisis and they need outside input. Um, but I think the awareness, and it's the awareness of probably the best way of describing it is something is really intense, like
Yeah.
a really powerful intuition that something is going to happen. And that's a good trigger.
Yeah. So when did you realize what were some of the early warning signs and then you recognizing it and finding ways to deal with it? How did all of that transpire?
Well, my wife is a psychologist, and she would periodically say to me things like, "Wow, you're sensitive. You're really super sensitive." And this is the key word. I mean, HS people hear that a lot. And it was probably, I think Elaine Aron came up with the concept late 1900s, early 2000s. So it was probably about that time. Uh, I, I I did a Myers-Briggs assessment and very intuitive. My intuition reading is really high. And again, nice, but so what? I didn't know how to use it.
Right.
And then I started to think about it, and then I thought, well, this is crazy. I'm a lawyer. I'm not going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the thinking kind of thing. And I think it was probably I've been aware of it, but I guess it was probably last fall I really embraced it. I was invited to do a presentation at a neurodiversity conference. So I thought, okay, so let's really take a look at what this is all about.
Yeah.
And what I did was set up the HSP attributes, and then I tried to figure where and when I had used them. And it turned out that virtually all of my work embodies the HSP attributes. So somewhere along the line, I've internalized it without realizing it. How did that happen? I don't know. But to me, it's interesting. And what's interesting now is that, okay, given the numbers, there are all sorts of other people going through life saying, wow, this is weird. Why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
And not that I want to change the world, but if my experience is worth anything, it's somebody else going, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
So I want to dig further into that notion of what it's allowed, what it's going to do for your life. And this is my question. There's a lot of people out there in their adult years that find out about maybe they're like, even for Elon Musk, he has a slight level of Asperger's. I've heard that he's
Right,
neurodivergent.
right,
And
right.
even people have said Einstein had, parts of his hemispheres of his brain fused together, and he was technically that way. One of the most popular shows on TV, Big Bang Theory, the main character, uh, Sheldon, he's absolutely autistic on the spectrum. And my question to you is this: when you figure this stuff out late in life, does it give you a higher level of appreciation for everybody, a level of empathy that's a little different, or how does that transform you?
Yeah, good question. It increases my sensitivity and understanding. I have three grandchildren, all of whom are probably ADD.
Yeah,
And my wife, being a psychologist, has got this analyzed within his life. So I realize what it must be like for these kids who are teenagers to live a teenage life with all the pressure there, with this added neurodivergency, this added weirdness of the way the brain processes information.
yeah,
So instead of somebody misbehaving or acting in a socially unacceptable manner, I'm thinking, well, no, maybe there's stuff going on that none of us understand.
yeah,
Maybe there's some interactions that none of us really have a handle on, and then maybe back off, you just hold on to judgmentalism and then just really try to get a handle on what's going on. I mean, I have like no science background whatsoever.
yeah,
And so I depend upon what other people much smarter than I have written about it. So there's lots and lots and lots of information, most of which is good, some of which is gets garbage.
yeah.
But it for me it's learning more about it. Since I've increased working more with HSP, I'm starting to target HSP entrepreneurs now because some of our needs are different, but also we've got some pretty amazing skills that can be power skills, and also just the reassurance that yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. You can do good stuff. You can do good stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're any different, any better. It's just that you have skills that other people don't. So it's just kind of okay. And so kind of in my case, it's almost demystifying the process.
Along those lines, I'm thinking about just even what I was saying about the telepathy tapes. I'm starting to believe, and I've been in the special needs world for about 20 years with my son, very involved, and I've seen all of these kids, and society has this way of kind of, like they're kind of shuttled to the side, so to speak. I mean, they're embraced. Like every time I see Miles out, I am blown away by the heart and compassion of human beings because the older he's gotten, the more evident it is. And people are so kind and people have big hearts. But I think these kids have special talents and abilities. And if we as a society can harness that and tap into what they're really good at, I think that's the bigger thing. All of us that have these special things that lead us to neurodiversity. I think if society would tap into those things instead of looking as a problem or special or something that we have to treat, I think if we harnessed it as humans, we would make our lives so much more enriching. Like with your grandkids, like if we would just harness that, like what can you do good
Yeah,
with having
yeah,
these racing thoughts? what
yeah,
what would work
yeah,
for you instead of it being we need to treat this is an issue. You know what I'm saying? It's like a
yeah.
psychological shift.
Well, it's interesting. A number of years ago, I've lost probably 2000, probably 6 or 7 years ago. I was watching a marketing webinar about copywriting because I wanted to learn copywriting. It wasn't part of my skill set, so I wanted to learn it. And I got so tired of the bullshit and the hype. I mean, it was just on and on and on and on and on. And I was really, really PO'd over it because it was just so disgusting.
Yeah.
And I found in my personal rant, I thought, yeah, why can't we market the way we make friends? Why can't we just build relationships? So that triggered a whole opening in my mind that, hey, when you strip away the jargon and strip away the theory, success in business is all about relationships. It's not the high power MBA theory. It's about personal relationships.
Yeah.
And so I started to play with that a lot more. So I came up with the concept of authentic marketing, and authentic marketing is, attracting clients as you want to make friends and maintaining and building relationships. The whole honesty, personal kind of a thing, which is like so far away from our industrial age model of education and our industrial age model of hospitals. And I mean, everything is the industrial age standardization, one size fits all. So once we move away from the one size fits all, we can take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of the other thing, and kind of bring it together. So that to me was, hey, I don't have to be as obnoxious as many lawyers are. I can do well for my clients by being, polite and friendly and courteous. And so that's opened all sorts of doors to me. So when I take a look at the big picture, that maybe we're finding, maybe at some level the cosmos of the universe is saying, well, the industrial model worked, but it's not working now.
Yeah.
So we have to look at some of these individual bright spots rather than the assembly line.
Yeah. The thing that I find interesting about these modern times with grandchildren and my children is the amount of noise that's happening right now, especially politically. And I think in my lifetime, the biggest, most tumultuous things that happened in my childhood was when Reagan got shot and when the Challenger exploded. And I was in middle school at the time when the Challenger exploded, so that was special to me because Christy McAuliffe was going to teach me in my classroom. And when that happened, that just added to what that was. But I remember Reagan that night giving that speech, that stellar speech about the astronauts touching the face of God and just this triumphant thing. And I could fall asleep at night. I felt comfortable. And something that I feel bad about all of us that we're living through right now, no matter how you believe politically, there is so much noise and negativity that's seeping into these kids about this kind of deviation from civil disagreeing and this deviation from just being civil with each other, even if you don't agree with it. And I think that's a part of the sensitivity and things that are going to develop in these kids, in the COVID kids, so to speak. It's like,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to create more hypersensitivity and things that are environmentally born that aren't genetically born.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that, and I know from my own experience how impacted I am by noise. And I'm really lucky because I live, close to the center of a city of 3 million people, but I've got nature at my back door, so I can go and talk to the trees, or I can talk to the squirrels or whatever. I've got that space out there. But people downtown that are in a 50-story apartment building, and it's just constant noise, constant noise, constant. Where do they go for peace? Like,
Yeah.
where do they go for that silence?
Yeah.
And I know that, well, we have to turn our computers off to rest. Cars need to rest. Machines need to rest. They run 24/7. They start to burn out. They start to fall apart. But somehow we don't have as many opportunities to escape the noise. And we come home, so we turn our screens on. Like instead of just sitting and listening to some music or something, turn the screens on for some more diversion.
Yeah.
So there's almost the addiction to stimulation, which is and I know that I have a built-in. I know that when I've had enough of anything, even chocolate, I hate to say, I know when I've had enough of chocolate.
Yeah.
And so that's a learned thing. But yeah, I think that's a problem is a lot of the kids because there's been so much of everything. It's hard to recognize the sign like I'm getting overloaded. I've had enough. It's time for a timeout.
Yeah. So I just picked up a book. I've been finding myself since January finding books that are going to comfort me and make me feel hopeful. One of the first ones I did was Fred Rogers about his life, and he was just the triumphant human being. Like what you
Yeah.
saw on screen was what he was.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
reading Jane Goodall right now, and it's an interview that she had prior to the pandemic. She's 90, and it's all about hope. The name of the book is Hope. And I think about what you're saying about nature and about being connected and about giving something better to our kids. And even though we're older and we're slipping out of this world, we're on the other side of it, we still have an obligation. And that's going to help this noise, and that's going to help all of the successive generations that might develop HSP and other things that might go on. So I think there's a level of us in this modern era that needs to find what you have, which is this nature and this peace. And I've always felt that, and I always do that with my kids. I live next to a nature preserve, and I love going out and just seeing the world. And I think that's the disconnect with human beings, especially in
Yeah.
this country. There's screens all the time. Everybody's looking down. When you go out, I went to a show the other night. We got tickets to see the comedian Wanda Sykes. And it was the first time in my life that when you walked in, they had this weird bag that looked like the mitt that the baseball players wear when they slide into second.
Yeah.
And you drop your phone in it and it seals up. And everybody in this auditorium had no phones and everybody was standing up and walking around and talking. It was like
Wow.
the antidote to Aldous Huxley's world. And we were all just like interacting, and that's it. It's almost like we have to be forced to
Yeah.
put our money where
Yeah.
our mouth is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Again, I didn't really realize this until fairly recently in my life, but I've always been connected to nature. I've always felt a strong connection. I remember as a kid, maybe 3, 4, 5, whatever, the family would go to the beach. And first thing I would do was grab some sand. I'd have handfuls of sand. And I usually had a handful of sand in I usually had a handful of sand all the time I was out of the water. And I remember so many times getting in the car and my mother making me drop my sand to get into the car. Not a big deal. But what was interesting is my natural impulse was to connect with the earth,
Yeah.
pick up a handful of sand. It was almost a security blanket for me. And even now, I don't grab handfuls of sand, but I will, touch a tree or touch a plant or
Yeah.
make physical contact. And again, really lucky because there's a gorgeous ravine out behind us, and so there's that natural connection there. Um, and maybe I don't know what it means, but I think many of us do have the desire to connect with nature. We just don't know how to go about doing it, or it's maybe not the right thing to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, from the spiritual point of view, the idea of a meditation, the idea of quiet, the idea
Yep.
of silence,
Yep.
you know, and that's one of the my big lessons from being interested in creation spirituality is creation is quiet sometimes. Not always, but sometimes creation is so quiet.
Yeah.
And just it to me, it is so refreshing to feel the silence.
Yeah. So what was the first step that you took to address the sensitivity that you had? So for anyone that's listening that might be curious, thinking that they may have something they need to address, what would be a good first step?
I think that's a good question. Elaine Elaine Aron wrote a book called The Highly Sensitive Person, and there's been 2 or 3 editions out of it since. And I reread that about a month ago, and it's just absolutely fascinating. So that's a good place to start. It's readily available. There is much to my surprise, all sorts of HSP information available online. There's there's a group called HSP for Men, something like the men's HSP group, which is a separate kind of a thing. Because as men, we're not supposed to be sensitive. We're supposed to be big boors. That anyway.
Yeah.
And there's a group that I've joined that it's just great. We just kind of talk about our experiences. All sorts of resources online. I think the first thing would be to go online and get an assessment. They're free assessments there. um, there's 20, I think 27, 28 questions.
Yeah.
And if you answer more than 12 of them, yes, you are highly sensitive. Well, I hit 22, so I think I'm there. So that would be a good place to start, and then find some resources. Find some resources that will support that. And again,
So
there's no end of them out there. Just some
yeah.
online research.
So if anyone wants a personal touch and they've been moved by our conversation today, could they reach out to you? Would that be okay?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. What I've done, I've got the front page of my website. There are a number of things there. One of which is it's a transformation connection. It's a 12 lesson personal transformation course. And it really does align, although it doesn't use the expression HSP, it's just totally aligned with it. So what I've done is set up a 25% discount for people who are HSP on that course.
Okay.
And to get that is just go to my website and check option A, and that will take you on through there. And there's other kinds of I've got two other freebies. I've got 2 free books there. But certainly, if somebody wants to talk to me about their HSP, not that I'm an expert, but share experience, contact me through my website or LinkedIn. More than happy to. I'm not a therapist, so I'm not going to get into therapy, but
Sure.
more than happy to share experiences and share references and go check here or go there. So yeah, more than happy to do that.
And I will put that in the show notes. One of the great things about being a part, we connected through Podmatch, which is becoming more of a bigger community in the world of podcasting. And one of the most enjoyable things for me is to be able to reconnect. So I'm so glad you reached out. It's so good to kind of galvanize these friendships from afar that become more and more real. So I'm so happy that you reached out. I'm so glad that we could reconvene.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll keep this door open, this digital door.
Sure.
And then we'll speak down the road, because we just keep scratching the surface, and I think that's the beauty.
Yeah.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.